I've always loved the outdoors, but after what happened last summer, I'm not sure I ever will again. It was early August, and I had planned a weekend camping trip with my two best friends, Lisa and Marianne. We'd all had a hectic summer with work and needed to disconnect. Lisa had found this spot in a forest not far from Trondheim, where you could drive up to a small gravel parking area and then hike into the woods to set up camp. We reached the parking spot late afternoon. It was nothing more than a small gravel patch at the edge of the forest, barely big enough for two cars. When we arrived, it was completely empty, just Marianne's blue Volvo sitting there alone. It was exactly what we needed, peace and quiet, away from the city noise and stress. We packed our backpacks and headed into the forest, but we didn't go very far. Marianne isn't much of an outdoors person, so we found a small clearing where we could still see the parking area and the car through the trees. "This is perfect," I said when we found a small clearing. "Close enough to the car if there's any trouble, but far enough to feel like we're in the wilderness." We set up our tents. Lisa and I shared one, while Marianne had her smaller one and lit a small fire. We grilled sausages, drank a few beers, and talked about everything from our husbands to work. It was a warm August evening, and the shadows grew longer as the sun disappeared behind the hill. It was completely dark when we heard a car coming up the gravel road. We could see the headlights filtering through the trees before we could see the vehicle. "Maybe it's other campers," Marianne said optimistically. All three of us looked toward where the car would soon appear. When it reached the parking area, it didn't park properly. It just stopped with its high beams pointing directly at our campsite, blinding us. We all held our hands up to shield our eyes from the intense light. We looked at each other questioningly, momentarily speechless, as the bright lights continued to shine directly at us. Marianne waved her arms, trying to indicate to the driver that we were being blinded. When there was no response, she stood up, jumped up and down, and shouted, "Hey, can you turn off the lights? You're blinding us." Still nothing happened. The car remained there with its lights on, directed straight at our camp. We exchanged confused glances. No one seemed to know what to do next. "It's probably just some teenagers trying to scare us," Lisa said and stood up. "I'll just go ask them to turn off the lights." "Are you sure that's a good idea?" I asked, suddenly thinking that whoever was sitting in that car, deliberately shining lights at three women alone in the woods, might not have the best intentions. "We can't just sit here being blinded all night," she replied, her voice determined despite the slight tremor I detected. We watched as Lisa took her flashlight and began walking toward the parking area. She had gotten about halfway there when suddenly the car's lights went off. A moment later, we heard the engine rev, and the car drove away with tremendous speed, gravel spraying under the tires. Lisa came running back to the campsite, visibly shaken. "Oh my God, I thought he was going to run me over," she gasped, her face pale in the firelight. We discussed the incident as we sat around the fire. Who had been in the car? Why had they just sat there shining lights at us? And why had they driven away so quickly when Lisa approached? "You're probably right," Marianne said to Lisa. "Just some stupid kids trying to scare us." "Maybe," I said, not entirely convinced. We sat a little longer around the fire, but the mood wasn't the same as before. It was as if something had been disturbed. "Maybe we should just go home," Marianne suggested, her voice small and uncertain. Lisa and I exchanged glances. "And let some jerks with a car chase us away?" Lisa said. "No way. We're three tough women. We're not going to be scared off by something like this. Lisa's right, I added, though I wasn't feeling nearly as brave as I sounded. They're gone now. We're fine. We stayed up for another hour or so, talking around the fire, trying to get back our carefree mood from earlier. But there was an undercurrent of tension that hadn't been there before. Eventually, we decided it was time to go to bed. I think it was around 2 in the morning when I woke up to Lisa stirring beside me in the tent. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. I was still half asleep. "What?" It sounded like footsteps around the tent. I listened intently. At first, I heard nothing but Lisa's breathing and the wind moving the trees. But then I heard it too, the sound of twigs breaking under someone's feet. "Marianne?" I whispered, hoping it was our friend who had gotten up to pee. But then we heard Marianne's voice from the other tent. "Hey, is that you guys up?" My heart began to pound hard in my chest. If it wasn't Marianne who was walking around our tents. We lay completely still and listened. The footsteps moved slowly around our tent, circling it deliberately. I grabbed Lisa's arm, my fingers digging into her skin. Each snap of a twig felt like an electric shock going through my body. The footsteps stopped at the entrance to our tent, and we could hear heavy breathing. "What do we do?" I mouthed silently to Lisa, who looked as terrified as I felt. The footsteps moved away from our tent, heading toward Marianne's. We heard them circle her tent too, the pace unhurried, as if whoever was out there was taking their time, examining our campsite. "We need to see what it is," said Lisa, but I grabbed her arm. "No, wait," I whispered. "It could be, I don't know, an animal or something." But we both knew it didn't sound like an animal. It sounded like a person deliberately moving around our tents. I immediately thought of the car that had left so suddenly earlier. Had they come back? We heard someone, what sounded like someone rummaging through our backpacks that we'd left outside the tent. We were too terrified to go out. Lisa grabbed the knife we had used to cut bread earlier, and we held our breath. The rustling outside grew more intense. I could hear items being moved around, zippers being opened. It felt like an invasion, knowing someone was going through our personal belongings while we sat frozen in fear inside. After what seemed like an eternity, we heard the footsteps retreating. The sound grew fainter and eventually disappeared completely. We thought it might be over, but we remained alert, straining to hear any sound in the darkness. After about 1 minute of silence, but felt like an hour, it suddenly became blindingly bright outside. Through the tent fabric, we could see intense light flooding the campsite. We realized the car had returned. Whoever had been walking around our tents must have been the driver from the car earlier, and now they were back. "Oh my God," Lisa whispered, clutching the knife tighter. Suddenly, the zipper of our tent flew open and we both screamed in terror. A figure tumbled inside, and it took us several panicked seconds to realize it was Marianne. "Jesus Christ, I almost stabbed you," Lisa gasped, still gripping the knife with white knuckles. Marianne was trembling uncontrollably as she zipped the tent closed behind her. I heard the footsteps go away and saw the car lights. "I couldn't stay alone in my tent anymore," she whispered, her voice breaking. We huddled together in the small tent, our hearts racing. The bright light from outside filtered through the tent fabric, making it feel like we were in a spotlight. "Is there someone out there?" I asked after a moment, my voice barely audible. "I don't know," Marianne replied nervously. "I don't think so. I think whoever it was is back in the car." We were terrified, hardly daring to breathe. We lay completely still inside the tent, afraid any movement might be visible through the thin fabric with those powerful lights shining on us. I could feel my heart pounding so hard, I was sure it was audible outside the tent. After what felt like forever, we heard the car's engine rev up, and then the sound of tires on gravel as it drove away. The sudden darkness after the bright lights was almost as disorienting as the light had been. "Let's get out of here," Marianne said immediately. "Now, while they're gone." "Wait," Lisa hissed, her grip on my arm almost painful. "Wait a bit, what if there are more out there?" We sat in tense silence, straining our ears for any sound. Minutes ticked by, feeling like hours. No footsteps returned and the car didn't come back. After 15 agonizing minutes, I whispered, "Okay, I think it's safe now. Let's go." "We don't need to pack up," I said. "Let's just grab what we need and get to the car." We didn't even attempt to pack up the tents. I grabbed my flashlight and turned it on, pointing it toward the tent entrance. Lisa still held the knife in her hand. Slowly, I unzipped the tent and shone the light outside. The beam from my flashlight swept across our campsite. Our backpacks had been opened, with clothes and other items scattered around the ground. I moved the light in a circle, pointing it toward the surrounding trees, searching for any sign of movement or a person lurking in the darkness. "Is anyone there?" Marianne whispered, her voice shaking. "I don't see anyone," I replied, my own voice unsteady. We hurriedly gathered the scattered belongings, shoving them haphazardly back into our backpacks. We left behind anything that wasn't immediately visible or necessary. The three of us huddled together as we made our way toward the parking area. I led with the flashlight, Lisa followed with the knife held out in front of her, and Marianne stayed close between us. We walked slowly, jumping at every sound, convinced that at any moment someone would leap out at us from between the trees. The short distance to the car seemed to stretch on forever. Each step was taken with caution, each shadow potentially hiding danger. Finally, we reached Marianne's blue Volvo. We practically threw ourselves inside, locking the doors immediately. Marianne's hands were shaking so badly she could barely get the key into the ignition. When the engine finally started, we all let out a collective sigh of relief. We drove away from there as fast as we could, not daring to look back.